Hello, everyone, and
Hello.
welcome back to Curiosity. I'm Lauren.
I'm Adam.
And today, if you clicked on today's episode, you are going to be
Oh my
truly
God.
just blessed by Brittainy Taylor.
It's such a good episode. I think it's the first episode that I got about 6 whole minutes into the episode.
You did, yeah.
And I was like, oh, there's so many things. I literally go through. So what I do is I go through and I listen to it and I really try to find the moments that are amazing and try to pull those out. I already had 3 or 4 by the time I hit 6 minutes, and the whole episode was that way.
I know.
It's really
know.
cool.
She's incredible, and I loved having the conversation with her.
Yeah.
But if you're, just clicking on and you're just an avid listener of Curiosity, and you're like, who is this person? So Brittainy Taylor, she's very multifaceted, as many of our guests are.
Yeah, of course.
She is a mom. She is an IT director for a growing celebrity business. She is a Thai woman and a reality TV alum from Very Cavallari, if you've ever seen that. Then you know Brittainy. So Brittainy's life is truly a patchwork of diverse experiences.
Yeah, which you'll hear in the episode too. She really does get into so many little pieces. I feel like you guys really did a deep dive on 6 or 7 different topics.
Yeah.
And everything was so well fleshed out. And I feel like she was just so vulnerable in it. And it's amazing to hear.
She definitely came in very ready and willing to be vulnerable, which is something I love about her, which she is on her social media as well. She just is very authentic.
She's just herself. Yeah. She's just real.
She's very real. Okay. So then a couple things just to give you an idea of what we're going to be talking about besides, the idea of who she is. Now you know her. But we do talk about a little bit about her experience on reality TV, and just the impact that had in her life. But we also really talked about a lot of balancing acts, like motherhood, again, her IT career, and entrepreneurship as a whole. And we explore her Thai heritage. And that was a fun part of the conversation. I talked about my experience as, an Indigenous woman and her as a Thai woman, and us being, having kind of a mixed experience of things. And that was really fun. We really relate on that level.
Yeah.
And that was fun.
Yeah, that was really cool.
Got to dive
I loved
into
that piece of the conversation.
Yeah. Yeah, it was great. And we talked about her grandma's influence on the way she's raising her child. And I thought that was so fascinating how she's blending her ancestry, and
she can't provide the same experience she had, but she can carry the torch in a different way. And that was such a cool little piece.
Right. No, yeah, I love that.
I think that's so important for so many people, whether you're mixed or if you're just trying to live into your heritage. Whatever it is that you're trying to do, you're going to do it your own way, and that's going to be unique. And you are going to be the grandma one day that somebody's talking about how they were trying to pass the torch.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, that's sweet. That's a sweet way to look at it. And we talked about her choosing, a partnership with her partner over marriage. That was fascinating. When we talked about curiosity, obviously as a key to her personal and professional success, something that we are all about here at Curiosity. And then, like I said, entrepreneurship, motivations, and we talked about her gardening passions. That was fun.
When she was on the side of the road, if she likes it, she's going to grab it and put it in her garden. I'm like, that's incredible.
Yeah. Yes. That's just very who she is. So we talked about the role of curiosity in Brittainy's life and her mindset. And then we reflected on her personal growth and transformation, her spirituality, things like that. So it is, like you said, Adam, kind of a mixed bag. We do talk about lots of different things, but it's really all about who she is. Yeah. Like I mentioned, she's multifaceted. So we had a lot to cover. Yeah.
It's so interesting to see so much curiosity and so much growth and healing come from one person. She went through her own deconstruction journeys of her own, and to just see that all just amalgamate into the person who she is now. It's great. It's another person that we get to see go through this in real time and just continue to be vulnerable online. And it's really great.
Adam texted me while he was listening to the episode. He said, you just need to rebrand the podcast, which we're not doing. Don't you worry. But he was like, you need to rebrand the podcast to Oldest Daughters. Yeah. And I was like, yeah, maybe, but maybe we should just create that merch that we were talking about. Yeah. So maybe we'll have some Oldest Daughter merch. But anyway, any last thoughts?
Just tune into this episode of The Oldest Daughters.
Yeah, tune into this episode. You guys are going to love Brittainy Taylor. Follow her. Give us a follow if you haven't already. And we'll see you on the other side. Enjoy this episode. Brittainy Taylor.
of these in so long. I feel like I'm like, what do I do? Do I talk?
Who am I?
What do I touch? I'm like, oh, thank you for giving me tea because I wouldn't know where to put my hands.
Of course, I know. Same. This is why we have props. Well, welcome to Curiosity and cheers.
Cheers.
I love it. Okay, so yeah, we were just talking. Obviously, you do a lot of things. You've been a lot of things. Which is part of being a curious cutie. That's what we call the listeners now. We're all curious cuties.
I love it.
So you are clearly one of those.
It's good for merch.
It is, right? We're working on it. Okay. It's like in the works. But yeah, so as somebody who's like, you're constantly working on yourself and transforming, that's like a big part of who you are. I mean, even how you come across online, like on your socials, like you're all about just like doing your very best with what you've got.
But
like,
honestly, lately, I feel like I am like, do you ever get overwhelmed from transforming and you're just like, okay, I would just like to be in this moment. I don't need to shed my scales. I don't need to like create anew. I just want to be for a moment.
Do you ever feel like you're fighting like yourself in that way?
Yeah, I think, and I said this to you off, but I off screen, but I really feel like it's our generation a little bit, is that we're this constant like hustle, like what's next, or what are you doing, or what's going on. And I went to dinner with my partner, and you know, his friends show up and they're all like, oh, blah blah, and you know, it's always becomes the conversation of like, what are you doing,
right?
And I feel like, I don't know if it's generational, I don't know if it's just the world that we live in, but I feel like if I don't say something big, then it feels flat. And I just want to be okay in feeling flat. Like I just want to be like, honestly, today I watched Hell's Kitchen for two seasons and I did absolutely nothing. And I work day in and day out right now, and I made dinner. That's what I'm doing. I'm a mom right now, you know? But other days I want to be like, I mean, I have a list. I woke up at 3 a.m. yesterday and I was like, okay, I want to get this, you know, I want to do a podcast, or I want to do another business, or, you know, I want to travel, you know, at least 3 times next year. And then I get into these little funks where I was like, I just want to curl in my couch. So I don't know. I don't know what I am.
I feel like the hustle brain, like it does come in spurts. Like, I don't know if that's the right word, but like bursts, I guess. And I feel like what makes a lot of us multifaceted human beings feel like kind of crazy is the fact that it comes in bursts, and then we like do a bunch of reflection. We're like, oh, but I really just want to live my life like with my kid, with my dogs, with my garden, you know, whatever it is. It's like, and then that makes you be like, it's not even really a high and low, because not one is high and not one is low, but like just the contrast is what makes, I feel like a lot of us feel like chaotic within ourselves, when it's really like a lot of us are already like that. Like we could relate a lot more if it was spoken about more. That like the contrast of like our even desires. And that's been a huge, you know, topic for us here, like on the podcast, is like, how do we embrace the like self-employed or like entrepreneur side of ourselves, as well as embracing that slower life? Like we're taking from multiple generations of lessons, I feel like. We're like watching our parents and then watching our grandparents, like taking the best from kind of all that we've seen and gleaned, and we're like, okay, now how do I do all of that?
Well, also I think you have to think about where it's coming from too, right? I think about it all the time, like, is my motivation coming from the never-ending what's it called, the syndrome where you never think you're doing good enough?
Like imposter syndrome.
Is it coming from imposter syndrome where like I want my mom to be proud of me, and I need to have the next best thing? Or am I competing with somebody that I see online that I think is, you know, something that I need to aspire to be for whatever reason? Is it because I want better for my kids? Is it simply because I need to pay a bill? You know, and that's where like I've been sitting with, is all of these things I'm coming up with, or all these things that I had like a massive breakdown 2 weeks ago. And I was like, where is it coming from? This never ending, never enough. And honestly,
I think my breakdown was last week, by the way. So I feel like there must be something in the air.
Oh my gosh. And it's what am I doing it for? Because and then I think about too, like we grew up, we're the generation of the iPhones. We're the generation of the internet. We're the generation of all of these new technologies and these new waves. And, and I feel like sometimes I'm competing with smart people I don't even know, right? I'm like, man, am I gonna ever get to Bill Gates level? I don't know,
right?
And then do I want it?
Right?
Do I want it? Right? Yeah. And so that's where I'm at now. Is like, okay, at this moment, am I happy? Or do I need more? And if I need more, why? Do I need more because I need more space because I want chickens?
Right.
Or do I need more because I want more space because somebody on Instagram looks like they have a bigger house than me and I am not, legitimate without something more affluent?
Yep.
You know?
Yep. Those are the questions that are like constantly spiraling. And again, I feel like that's what makes us feel like that's what like leads to the breakdowns.
Oh yeah.
Cause like we're so reflective. I feel like this generation, like we're very much like introspective and trying to understand why we're thinking the way we're thinking, feeling the way we're feeling. Like, why are we making the choices we're like making? And it's like, we're trying to be as intentional and conscious because we're like, well, we only have this much. It's like the YOLO generation too. It's
yeah. You only live once. I'm like, okay, well, does that mean I'm supposed to travel everywhere and then never pay my rent? Like, I don't know what that means. Like, what am I YOLOing?
Exactly.
But I mean, oh man, I think about my 20s and I think about how easy it felt. It's so weird. And that's when people say, don't worry about age. Age isn't but a number, but that's not true. I think every decade I've been like, I felt I could reinvent myself. And I specifically remember being in my 20s and being around this lady I met at a gas station. And she was like, what are you doing? And I was like, oh, I'm going to, I don't remember, maybe the Bahamas or Bali. And she's like, oh, I wish I could travel. I'm like, you totally do it. And she's like, I can't, Mama, I'm stuck. And I don't know, this is going to make me cry. But like the last couple of weeks was the first time in my life I feel stuck. Like I feel like if I wanted to make a change in my business, I can't because I have a mortgage to pay and a child to take care of and people that depend on me. I also feel like we're the generation of generational trauma breaks, right? We're breaking curses and we're being better. And I feel like if I don't keep going, if I'm not going forward, I'm going backwards. And then I'm constantly having to turn around and be like, okay, am I breaking generational trauma right now? Okay, good. Am I breaking another one? Okay, I'm good. And so long as I'm rising the ladder of generational curses, then I'm good. But if I'm doing nothing, then am I don't know, am I worth it? Like, is it
am I doing the work?
Am I doing it?
Yeah.
Do I have to always do the work? I don't know.
Where are you? So do you have siblings?
I have 5 siblings.
Oh gosh, where are you in the lineup?
I'm the oldest.
That is another theme, okay, that I keep finding for the people, like the guests that we have on. I think it's just the people that I love and just relate to. Our oldest, like, daughters.
Yeah.
Because that is me, and that's like so many of our guests at this point. And that's like, maybe we just all have that pressure. We're very curious. We want to do our best. We, want to break the generational curses. But I saw this thing, and I'm going to butcher it, but it was something along the lines of like, your parents also broke generational curses. Yes, not all of them. Like, we can't break all of them. Like, we're not going to be able to in one lifetime. But they did as well. And I think that one gives you like that grace for your parents. It's like they also did the work. Like, they did their work as much as they knew how to. They broke generational curses, and you will as well. And it's just part of life, but you're not going to break all of them. Like, that's just,
and I may create some new ones.
Right.
While
as we do,
wreaking havoc, I think about that all the time when I watch River. She's my first daughter too. So I'm like, okay, I know the pressure you have right now to be perfect, to make the milestones. But I see her, and then I see how I was brought up, and I want, there are certain things I want for her and I want to instill in her. And then there are certain things I'm like, how do I teach out something that was instilled in me, right? Like, if like, for example, my mom was a perfectionist with me. If it wasn't an A, it wasn't good enough. Yeah. And I find myself with River being like, well, she's not talking enough. Do you think that means something? Or, hey, she made this like weird little whatever. Do you think that means something? And at first it was just a mom tick, right? Right. Where you're like, okay, I just want to make sure everything's good, and I want to notice things about my child. Right. And then it became obsessive. And I was like, what happened to just letting her chill? Yeah. Because I don't, but and I talked about this with my girlfriends. I'm like, but I don't know how to not do that, because that's what I was taught. That's how I was. So not only do I have to break that, but I have to reteach myself and then teach her, that's a lot.
That is a lot. It's a lot of pressure. And as like someone who has that, just, how much pressure is on her potentially. And you're trying to like alleviate that and give her, but you're raising her in a very, it's seemingly like free way for her. Like she has a bunch of dogs around her. She runs around, like I've seen her like barefoot, just like being a free little girl. Like that's like a whole different side, but like what is perfect to you is going to look different than it did to your mom.
Well, I think it's more the validation too. It's like, okay, I am letting her be the creative run around little girl, but if she doesn't make something, is that a fault because I let her run around barefoot?
Right.
And so
you're like, it's back on me.
It's back. Yeah, it's the second guessing. It's like when you're taking a test, right? You know the answer, but you go back and you're like, maybe it was C. I don't know, and then you change the answer and you're like, crap, I knew it the whole time. It's the same thing I think in motherhood or just going through life in general with me is if I just went with my gut and I did it, I always, knock on wood, I most of the time come out pretty good.
Yeah.
Whether it's a lesson or whether it's a win, I've come out great. I don't know why I'm so scared at this moment in my life to do anything,
Yeah. Maybe like it's potentially what's going on in our world, and we're like just the timing after COVID, and then it's just, I don't know, I feel like it's kind of what's going on in the world, but also it could potentially have something to do with how old your daughter is now. It's like you're kind of at this like, well, she's a toddler now, like it's a different headspace than she's a baby. How do I care for a baby? Now you're like, okay, there's a kid I'm taking care of. Like how am I raising this kid versus how am I nurturing this baby?
Right.
It's just a whole different headspace.
Yeah.
And you mentioned like, you talk a lot about your grandmother and like being Thai, and I know that like she means a lot to you.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk about that at all?
Yeah. I mean, and that's kind of where, I feel like the stuck moment, right? It's like, I wish I had $1 million to just continue to drive or fly home or have her here.
Yeah.
Because my grandmother was such a big influence in the go with the flow style.
Yeah.
Right. Because she had no control. She came here, didn't even know English.
Yeah.
Right? And so she really kind of embodies the spirit that I want River to get, which is life is going to be spinning around you, but there are things that you can control, which is your peace. And my grandmother does it flawlessly, whether she believes it or not. She does it I mean, the woman literally went into a hospital and was like, I'm going to be out in 3 days. I'm not dealing with this. Right. She literally fell on the floor, had a concussion, got up 2 minutes later. And just by the grace of the universe, it just healed so quickly to take care of her family. And within a week, she's making meals and having video over again.
Gosh, wow.
And she's bionic woman. She really is. But I think about her and I think about, wow, man, there's so many things about her that I want River to experience. And then it makes me so emotional to think like, she's in her late 70s. My daughter is going to see her grandmother is my mother, who's the wild rock star, crazy. And I love my mom, but we just went through so much because she was a young mom.
Yeah.
And the empathetic, the home cooked, the, visits to Thailand to see that family, like that's all starting to fade. And so it just makes me sad that like, I'm like, wow, we moved away. We moved so far. I can't just put us on a flight. I can't just put us on a woman, and that motivation of that ticket to Thailand, I can't do right now, and even
that's
if I
like
was
more
there,
that stuck feeling again.
Yeah. And even if I was there, how would I teach her to experience that? Right. It's not, I lived through the experiences of my grandmother, but I'm still not fluent in Thai. I still don't know every custom. I still, all the family there, would I be able to find them? And so this person who I held as such a spirit guide through my life is fading. And I don't know how I'm going to, I don't know how I'm going to do it without her, because other than that, we're just like living in Nashville, like
just a normal,
like just normal, right? There isn't any, there's not much culture.
I understand what you're saying. Yeah.
But I say all that, and then the universe always gives me a gift. So there's this poke place that I love so much in Mount Juliet.
Okay.
And I don't know how I found it. It was just on a random off day. And I realized I really loved the poke, right?
Okay.
So I kept going back.
You'll have to share with me later
It's
which
so
one
good.
it is, because I love poke too.
But I really liked it because they didn't like do, you know, they do spicy mayo
Yeah,
in
yeah.
Nashville and they just throw spicy mayo over it. This is not it. So it was super fresh ingredients. The food was really yummy. The service is great. And the woman is so nice. She reminded me of someone. I couldn't put my finger on it for a very long time. And then River and I went there for lunch one day. And I heard her speaking and I knew it was Thai, like just immediately knew. And I said, can I ask you, you know, your nationality? Because that language is familiar to me because I didn't want to like, you know, say, I'm Thai,
assume,
you know?
yeah.
And she was like, oh, I'm Thai. And I said, I knew it. And then as soon as she said that, I go, you remind me of my grandmother.
Aww.
Just like overly sweet, like just this personality, this very bubbly personality, wanted to make sure you got enough to eat, you know, loved River, like just kept talking about River. And so I was like, there it is. There's that little Thai person I needed in my life, you know?
Yeah.
And I'm like FaceTiming my grandma. I'm like, oh my God. And now, we say
cute.
in the every time we go in and we, you know, I give her my grandma's like hot peppers and things like that. So I say all that and I'm like, okay, maybe I can't give her my experience, but I can give her an experience, her own experience. And taking her to Thai Tennessee, right, when they have like the Thai festivals, like I think it's like once or twice a year now, we can go do that. I can take her to the temples, you know, we can save for a trip to Thailand. We don't have to necessarily see family, but I can show her that culture. I can introduce her to other cultures and how to respect and love those things. And through that, maybe she'll find a love, whether it's for Thai culture or for any, you know, Asian, African, whatever culture it is. If she finds herself respecting the culture first, maybe she'll find one to love, and then that's her experience.
Yeah, that's really good advice, because as you know, like being Indigenous too, it's like it is that kind of weird. My dad was raised with one thing. Yeah. You know, he was like on the reservation every summer with his grandparents who like he just like was raised as a native kid. Like that was like his life. And then mine, which is like my dad had those experiences and he taught me what I knew. Like I grew up going to powwows and fancy dancing and like all these things. It's like, I want to do that for my future kids as well, but I'm not going to have my dad or his family, like they're not around us. Like they're in Canada.
They can't guide you through it.
No, they can't guide me. And also it's like, it's up to me to acquaint myself with all of the things, one, I was taught as a kid, or two, the things I was never taught because my dad was also assimilated and his mom basically, named him Jeffrey, tried to make him as white as possible, you know, because she was also Mexican.
And that was my thing too, is so my mom, and the reason why I talk about my mom is she was very assimilated. Went to like Irish jigs and things like that.
Oh my gosh.
So my grandmother almost skipped a generation.
Yeah.
She came here and was basically had to whitewash everything that she was. Yep. And then I came along and I was like, I want to go to Thai school. Yeah. I want to go to Thailand. I want to do all this. And she was like, this was it. She says it. She's like, I always call you the fourth daughter because you were the first one that wanted to learn. Yeah. You know?
Yep. And that's very similar to like kind of my situation. And again, being the oldest daughter too, it's like, you do feel like you were almost in the previous generation almost in a weird way. You're like this bridge. Yeah. It's like an old soul situation. And yeah, it's like you can't give them your upbringing. You can't give them your experiences with, you know, my aunts and uncles that are the people who have taught me a lot of things. And like, you know, my kids aren't going to have those like same experiences, but yes, we have like powwows. We just had one this weekend in Nashville. I can bring them to that. And I can incorporate things that weren't exactly how I was raised, but maybe a different perspective.
And that will be good enough.
Yeah.
And that's where I'm at, is that is good enough, because I can't be expected. I am not my grandmother. I didn't grow up in Thailand. Right. You know? Right. I wasn't, you know, a true Buddhist all the way up until 18 years of age. Like that wasn't my first language. Those, you know, that food wasn't my first food. So now I'm incorporating that tradition and my interpretation of it. And that is what will be good enough. Because then it's on River to, you know, engage with that and then build on that, right? Because that's all I can give her.
Yeah. I'm going to ask a weird kind of intense question, but like you don't have to answer it. But do you ever feel, because I will admit I feel this way sometimes. Do you ever feel, because of how we're living in Nashville, Tennessee, you know, the partners we have, like just how we're just kind of living our lives, do you ever feel, well, one, the imposter syndrome, but two, almost as if when you're like learning your culture and like trying to pass it on or trying to teach other people, do you almost feel like you're appropriating your own culture?
Oh yeah. The good thing. The most encouraging thing though is that the people in my culture never feel that way about me, right? So as long as I'm not like, I'm very respectful of where that is, but every time I go home to Thailand, or every time I'm in a temple, or every time I meet somebody like the lady at the poke place, they're excited that I share that with them. You know, it's mostly the white people around me that are like, well, you're not really that Thai. You
right.
know? And I'm like, whoa, first off, can't tell me that. Right. Yeah. And then I feel that way. Then I'm like, okay, well, am I not allowed to have like, you know, am I not allowed to cook certain foods the same way, or is it not as good? Or am I not allowed to have, you know, the little temple in the back of the room? And it really isn't the people in my life. It isn't my family in Thailand. It isn't my grandmother. Those people want me to celebrate. They get excited that I celebrate it. And that is all the encouragement I really need.
Yeah.
But it does suck when I'm like, oh, I'm Thai. And they're like, oh, you know, sawadee ka. And that's really, I'm like, I can do that and count to 10, you know?
Yeah.
That kind of sucks. I wish I knew more, you know? But
I understand. I do
But
too.
then again, it wasn't our quote unquote fault. It's nobody's fault. It's just that we are the third generation or the fourth generation of people who, when they came here, felt that they had to shed their skin to fit in. And now we come back and we're like, absolutely not. It's like almost like we've got the ancestors in the past being like, nope, she's back again.
Yeah, she's back again. Well, now we're like safe to do it.
Yeah.
You know, so we can't blame them for what they had to do to survive. Right. It was a survival mechanism. And yeah, my grandmother spoke Spanish, and that was like her first language, but she like didn't speak it to my dad. My dad was the youngest, so he really didn't get any of his like the indigenous side or like his mom's Mexican side, because she's also Mexican indigenous. Yeah. And so like he's like picking up pieces and passing it on. But anyway, so yeah, we are like that third generation where it's like they didn't speak it or to, you know, their kids. I don't know if your mom did.
My mom was actually very, she was gonna hate for me for saying this, but and I believe her sisters were too. So there were 3 daughters that my grandmother had, and I believe that we grew up in a very Italian Irish neighborhood in Philadelphia, and it was pretty aggressive to fit in. And I think that through those experiences, they became almost embarrassed that they were something different, and so by trying to fit in, you know. And it wasn't really again until I remember getting made fun of and getting into a fight, right? So like back then, I think my mom's response was to fight, you know, I'm fight all the way, and she was flight. And I can't blame her for that, right? Of course. Because she just wanted to get through. She had the mother that couldn't speak English. I had years of experience with fighting, right? So I was ready to go forward, and that makes sense. What you were saying is like that the scare, the fear, the freedom to live that culture. Wow, we really do have we have a really great opportunity to bring everything that was almost lost back. Yeah, you know.
But it's a lot of pressure.
It's a lot of pressure. It's a lot of pressure.
Are there any like specific like things from your culture that you have implemented into like, well, one, your life and like your lifestyle, but also in how you're raising River?
So, I mean, it's not really cultural to Thailand, but my grandmother grew up on a farm in Thailand. Okay. She had the rice fields. And so when we go home to Philly, my grandmother's entire house is a huge garden. And there's almost anything you can imagine. And if she likes the plant and she sees it on the side of the road, she's putting it in her garden and she's growing it, right?
I love that.
And so I started gardening, and honestly, it wasn't until this year that I was even very good at it. But I watched River in the garden, and the lessons that you can learn from there, just the simple of, you know, taking care of something, taking care of the earth, and building something. And then from there, finding the ingredients, right? So we can, you know, we kept the tomato plant alive. Great. So now let's put in Thai like Thai hot peppers or Thai eggplants,
Yeah.
and get her into those foods. I really do. We have a Thai tendency here in Murfreesboro, of all places, and a couple times a year they do celebrations with, you know, food and the monks and festivities, and I bring her there, and so she can listen to Thai music. And then my grandmother, every time my grandmother comes home, she makes traditional Thai meals for my daughter.
Aww.
And that's really where we're starting. And then with language, you know, so just kids in general, you want to teach them as much as you can so that they, you know, they're sponge, they get
Right.
everything. So, you know, the normal is English, Spanish, because it's a great way to be bilingual. But now we have Thai. So we'll watch, you know, a show in English. Like right now it's Encanto is our favorite one. So we'll watch it in English, we'll watch it in Spanish. And then I'll find somewhere on YouTube that has like a Thai version of it so she can hear it.
Yeah.
Just so she can start to understand the language a little bit. Obviously without speaking it in the house every day, she's never going to get there, but at least she can learn and appreciate it.
Well, she'll be like, at least at the very minimum, like she'll be able to walk to a place, hear someone speaking Thai and be like, hey, what's your nationality?
Yeah.
Like, you know, same sort of conversation that you had.
Yeah.
You give her that, you know, the brain wiring. She's so little, like she's going to recognize the language.
Yeah. And I think with my grandmother, you know, we didn't grow up with any money. My grandmother lives in the house that I grew up in, and my mom and her sisters grew up in as well. And so I think one of the other things that I'm bringing back is the sense of family. My Thai culture is very, you know, family, Asian culture in general, very family based. And I wanted to bring that back in the sense of giving her experiences.
Yeah.
So that's pressure of having the big house. I think about it. I'm like, actually, I would rather, you know, instead of spending $10,000 on balloons at a birthday party, let's go somewhere.
Yeah.
And hopefully those experiences where we go are much more cultured. Like, so if we like, for example, her first year was in the Bahamas, which everyone's like, oh, that's a great, you know, vacation. But we went to Marsh Harbor. We went to like, you know, we wanted to hang local hang. I wanted her to be more of around people. And that's probably what we'll do from now on, is obviously safe places overseas, but more that's involved in community and culture versus like, you know, a Four Seasons is great, but
it's great to stay there, but then you can go excursions, like go out and like find the locals,
because that's what's important is just, you know, we live in Nashville, even though it's becoming more diverse, it's very white.
It is very white. Yeah.
It was one of the starkingly different things moving from Miami that I was like, I don't know where I am, you know?
Right.
And I don't want River to lose sight of that.
Yeah.
And it's very important, you know, obviously not to appropriate, but to immerse yourself in others' cultures, of course, for the sake of respecting everyone.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like we are moving away from being so scared to appropriate. Like, I feel like the more we can learn, the more, because that was the whole, like, I feel like the fear of appropriating was also somewhat under the umbrella of like, I'm colorblind, like I don't see like whatever, and I'm like, no, see it, experience it, be respectful, of course, but like recognize our differences, recognize that this culture has this like type of traditions and whatever. Like there is beauty in recognizing that we are a rainbow of cultures and a rainbow of people.
I think people misunderstood appropriation. That's why it was such a weird trigger word for me.
Yes,
because I was like, look, if you think about what people were getting upset about, it's when you put it on as a costume. Or when you are at a party and you're, you know, making a certain accent, right, as a funny, or you're making fun of that culture. If you're traveling,
when it's not okay.
Right. If you're traveling and someone says, hey, you know, you should go enjoy this. And I know somebody that can put you in the, you know, traditional dress, and that culture is engaging with you to experience that. And you're doing it in a respectful manner. That's not appropriating. It's when you go out on Broadway and you're wearing a sombrero, right? It's like, come on. It's very easy to recognize appropriation.
Right.
You know?
It really doesn't take a lot of thought, but like not a lot of people are very good at critical thinking these days. Yeah. So, you know, we're working on it as a society, I hope. But yeah, so all that like being said, you know, you have this cute family unit with your partner and with all your dogs. How many dogs do you have?
4.
4.
Yeah.
4
I would
dogs.
love another one, but I'm not allowed to. So maybe it'll be a chicken or a donkey later.
Oh my gosh. A donkey?
I really want a donkey.
Just for the heck of it.
They're just so cute.
I love that.
You know?
And I mean, chickens, I can see like there's eggs.
Well, but chickens are they're dinosaurs. It's not even for the eggs. It's the fact that I want a mini dinosaur living with me. You know?
That's amazing.
They're wild. If you ever look at a chicken, you're like, you are a prehistoric creature.
Yeah.
I can see it in your eyes. You've lived lives.
You've lived lives.
And I need that kind of,
you need that in your life.
I need that I need animal spirits to come through and to guide me and my child, you know.
That is hilarious. I'm obsessed. Okay, well, can we talk about a little bit about your relationship with your partner?
Yeah.
So you guys are not married. Is
Nope.
that a conscious personal choice for you guys?
It was for a very long time.
Okay.
I keep going back to my mother, right? This is the generational traumas we're talking about. But my mother was married a few times.
Okay.
And there's nothing wrong with it. It's nothing to shame for her, but it's just something that it shaped me.
Yeah.
And it shaped me in the way of saying, well, one, what is marriage?
Yeah.
And why is it important? Because it feels like when she did do it, there were obligations that were needing to be made, right? So in order to get from step A to B, you had to do this. Children being one of them.
Yeah.
But I was born out of wedlock, and I was raised with support, and so I fully believe, not that anybody should aspire to be a single parent, but I mean, honestly, I think there's some really great things as I say that, but I understand the hardships of being a single parent, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
But I think what made me feel so bad was I know with the support system that I had with my family and my friends, that I still came out on top.
Yeah.
And so it's not impossible as long as there's love.
Yeah.
And not that I ever wanted to physically put myself in a situation of like a single parent, but I just didn't understand why, if I didn't get the sanctity of marriage. And it's probably because of my thought on religious freedom. And a lot of people in Nashville are probably never going to be my friend again. But I had a long history of life questioning faith.
Yeah.
For a lot of reasons. A lot of things
You're
that happened
in the
my
right
best.
spot. You're talking to the right people. Trust me.
It just felt like this book of text, and someone who's standing in front of me claiming to be infallible, which has the same medical makeup as me, is a human being, so cannot be infallible, probably picks their nose.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
You know, definitely poops every day.
Yeah.
You're like, how are you the beacon of more moral authority than I? And so unless I understood text and I took it for what it's worth, like Buddhism, I love the ideas of Buddhism and the symbolism of Buddhism. Even Christianity has its great text.
Yeah.
But I grew up in a religious freedom household. My grandmother was Buddhist. She came over, had to convert to Christianity in order to get married. Right. So that set me off, because I was like, oh, so somebody told you that you had to convert in order to get married.
Right.
That's kind of tough.
Right.
And then my aunt married into a Jewish family, and there's a lot of really great freedoms in there, but in the same question, right? They got married and then they had children, and then it was like, well, what religion is a child going to follow? Because that for us makes us realize, you know, family members on either side, which one is worthy and which is not. Right. So then I was like, why are you questioning worth based on how you believe in God? I don't get this. None of it made sense. And so what I loved about my aunt was that she took both. So my little cousin, I'll never forget, she's like 5 years old, and she's like, it's Hanukkah, Santa's coming. And I was like, great. I love you.
That's
you know?
cute. That needs to be like on a card.
But the big,
holiday card.
Santa's coming. But the biggest, I think, catalyst to religion and how I feel about marriage and how I felt about everything was, I was in 5th grade, and my teacher was just hard on the fire and brimstone type stuff. And I remember my mom said she came home and I was like under the stairs shaking. And I kept telling her that I was scared to do anything wrong because that meant I was going to go to hell, which she then found out was the entire course of the what she had said all day long. Yeah. So naturally my mom goes to this teacher and basically all but beats her up and makes her cry. And as she's doing that, my grandmother, who knows very little English, comes from multiple faiths at this point, says, you know, I'm your grandmother and your mom's your mom. It's kind of like God can be God, right?
Yeah.
Like there's just, it is what it is.
Yeah.
If you truly believe that God or whoever is the maker of the universe, That's almost like a creator. It's almost like a parent.
Yeah.
As a parent, I would never want to see you suffer.
Yeah.
And so whatever you believe, know that the universe, God,
The forces of
all of them, the fates,
yeah.
Are designed in your favor, and they would never want to see you suffer. Why would they make something to want to see it suffer? And so
that's beautiful.
Yeah. And so as I think about marriage, I watched a lot of suffering, and I couldn't quite grasp why you would marry someone just to make them suffer. Why you would want to, why would say you would have this unconditional love just to make them suffer. I now know differently, but this is where I was.
Sure.
And so what I felt was that I was being forced into something for government reasons. And I had to be a certain one, and it could be wrong. So if I said I married a church, they'd be like, why didn't you marry in a synagogue? Right. And I felt like, well, if I didn't do it the right way, then was it real?
Right.
Right. And that was just too much pressure on me. And I thought, love is love. If I want to be with someone for the rest of my life, then I'm going to choose that every single day.
Yeah.
And a piece of paper or a ceremony, filled with $80,000 and people that are going to complain about a DJ and food. That doesn't, it's not important to me.
Yeah.
As is the relationship itself and the commitment to each other. It didn't feel validating to have to do all those things. Now, as I'm older and with a child, and I've had to travel having different, because I gave her his last name.
Okay. Yeah.
So, by the way, if you have a different last name than your child, make sure you keep all the stuff. You have to bring like the birth certificate and all of that stuff. You get stopped, and for good reason.
Oh God, yeah. We're planning on having an entirely different last name than either of our last names for our kids.
I love that. Yeah.
So noted.
Yeah.
We'll talk.
So bring them all, or breastfeed. So you're like, I'll just squirt breast milk at you. If you really are frustrated. But for her, I think if and when he's ready, I now know the years that we've spent together watching him be a father, if it meant something to him and to her that we were together, I would totally do it.
Yeah.
Not because I feel that it's validating and necessary for me, but
right.
I feel if my daughter wanted to see her daddy and her mommy together in a ceremony,
sure,
then I would do it really small, really, really intimate, and
special
together.
For her,
special for us,
right,
because for me it's between us and the fates,
right the fates.
So I just, not that I think that the idea of marriage, of being together, of committing to each other, that's important. The paperwork and the never ending suffering that I saw, and the quickness to divorce, that's what really scared me, because I was like, what if I don't make the right decision?
Yeah.
But that's all entrusting in myself, my gut, and my partner.
Yeah. Well, if Adam and I had waited a year or two before getting married, we would have not gotten married. Not because or we would have, at the very most, we would have eloped probably, because neither of us care. He has a Roman numerals tattooed on his hand, and it's not our wedding day. It is the day I told him I was going to break up with my fiance.
I love that.
So he knew that was the day we were going to be together for. He was just like, we're soulmates, that. This is it.
Yeah.
So anyway, so our wedding anniversary, it takes a lot. He loves to plan dates and stuff. So it's he likes to take initiative and plan something for our anniversary, but just quite honestly, I don't care.
Yeah. I'm the same way.
I don't care about the day the government recognized that we were together. It doesn't mean anything to me.
As you're saying that too, it's really hard for me saying anything about the government because the fact that the government would have to recognize my marriage and not someone else's in equal rights, that's what really bothers me as well.
That's
right? I'm so you'll give me a piece of paper but not somebody else.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of fuck that. Right.
Right.
Why do I have to? I'll put my marriage in a trust so that because by the way, I don't want you to control anything of my life.
Yeah.
But I also you don't get the right to give me the right to love somebody. None of it makes sense.
Yeah.
I
agree.
But I do understand community. I do understand feeling supported by the people that you love. And that's probably another reason now I think about it, because I don't have a lot of friends and family. Not that I don't love people, but I just don't have, I have like a very small group that I call core.
Yeah.
You know, my family is very small because they've, you know, my grandmother, my grandparents moved very far away from everybody else. So there's 10 of us.
Right. Yeah.
So I don't feel like I need to stand in front of an entire community of people that may not be there when the dust settles.
Yeah.
And that's, I don't know, I'm all over the place, but I still don't think it's necessary.
Yeah. No,
I hate that. People are going to kill me for it.
No,
I know there's such a like cognitive dissonance about marriage, right? You're either like completely for it or completely against it. And I'm neither.
You're open to it, your mind changing. And that's like, I think the most important part is like, you can hold strong opinions. Like I think we both do, but what keeps us like going every day is the fact that like those can change.
Yeah.
And I think that's like important to remember. And you say like people are going to kill you for it, but like, first of all, our listeners are very much in line with like a lot of what you're saying and speaking about. A lot of them have like similar situations, and that's why I love our community.
Yeah. I
mean, maybe Nashville as a whole, like it's a different specific thing, but like our listeners are from like, first of all, everywhere. They're not just Nashville. But like they're like so into it. So you're definitely in like a good
but
space.
But you know what I mean? People think like if you don't want to get married or you don't believe in like the ceremony and all of that stuff, that you're 1 foot out the door. And that's not what I'm trying to explain at all. Like I'm very much a single committed person, right? Like I'm mono when it comes to relationships. I put my heart and soul into one person, and that is who I commit to. And saying all of that, I you know, if that person ever came to me and said, you know what, it's important for me to have this, and I loved them that much, that I would do that. But personally for me, it's just not like, I didn't grow up wanting to be a princess.
Yeah.
So I didn't grow up wanting a big marriage. I didn't grow up wanting those. I grew up wanting to live on my own, have a life that I love with people that love me back. And that was my biggest goal. And I feel like I've lived that.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, I love. I also love what you wrote in our questionnaire about curiosity. So I'm going to read that real quick because I'm interested in like how that plays into like your spirituality and all that. So, okay. So the question is, how would you describe curiosity and what role does it play in your life? And Brittainy answered, I think curiosity is intuition's playful cousin. It's part of my way of thinking and creativity. I'm always saying I'm curious. I think the old, how do you say that word?
Is it
adage?
The old adage, yeah.
Yes, okay. I think the old adage is wrong. Curiosity did not kill the cat. Complacency did her in. I was like, that's the cutest answer.
That's what I go by my whole life. Because think about intuition, right? You're like, everyone says, go with your gut. If you really think about it, your gut is basically a little tiny, like, curious thing going, something doesn't feel right. Something doesn't act right.
Yep.
Just because if you're not completely curious, then you're complacent, and and that's really where intuition goes to die.
Well, we know that like anything that remains stagnant, like
it doesn't do well.
It doesn't do well. It will rot. Like it just stays where it is and just rots. And it's like, we know that even in the physical way, like for our own bodies, like in order to take best care of our health, like we need to move our bodies. Yeah. Like
also when you think of curiosity killed the cat, right? You think about a cat. I'm like, I'm pretty sure she sat by a window and something got her. Like you're just like, you know, like I want you to be, I think living curiously is, people get a sense again that curiosity has to be this hustle, and it doesn't. Right. I get curious about. I mean, I showed you my bite mark. I get curious about my garden. And I go too far in the garden, I get bit by a bug. Right. Like it's fine. Things are gonna happen. That's how life lessons go.
Yeah.
But if I never got curious about could I grow this one thing?
Right.
And it did well. I'm like, can I grow this other thing? And now I have this big beautiful garden that I get to share with my daughter, and that doesn't pay bills. It doesn't give my Instagram any more following. In fact, I probably lost some because everybody thinks I'm, you know, the crazy like garden lady.
I love it,
but it brings me joy.
Yeah.
And I think that's what's important is what you're curious about. It should spark some kind of creativity. It should spark some kind of, you know what, this doesn't, if it's moving you to something, and there isn't anything wrong with being objectively curious your entire life, because that's how you grow.
Right. And I think a lot of people too, especially now, take anything that you share online. They're like, oh, this is like now her identity, her brand, her like, this is what she is now. And like, no, I just have a fucking garden. Like, I'm not like trying to teach you how to be a gardener. Like, I might share tips because I want to, but I'm not like, that's not who I am now.
And oh man, Instagram's the worst right now, because the same thing, right, is with River. Is I had a baby and everyone's like, oh my God, now she's Miss Mom. And I'm really not. I just don't. That's what's interesting to me in this part of my life, is watching a little grow. And I have my feelings about momfluencers. So trust me, I am not going to make my kid do crazy dances. I'm very adamant that I'm not going to expose her too much online.
Yeah.
Right? But I do think that there's something to be said of like I come from the first generation of Instagram. Mm-hmm. We do, right?
Mm-hmm.
When it was just like a picture.
I thought it was just a filtering app. Yeah. Like I literally was posting
crazy filters, you know, the ones that like had like the edging around.
Yes, I posted with those. I literally didn't know it was public. Like I looked one day, and this was probably a year after having Instagram, and I had like 400 followers or something, and I was like, what, people can see I'm posting? I thought it was literally just like a filter, like a photo editing.
Think about like MySpace or Facebook or any of those things. For us, they were photo albums. They were a way to digitally document your life.
Yep.
And it wasn't really until recently with like TikTok and Instagram Reels that people made it a content and content creation. And what is it? So a lot of times when I'm posting, it's just because I'm like, wow, my kid climbed a tree. That's kind of cool. Click. You know, I'm not, I don't really have, and that's what probably makes me a terrible influencer, is that I don't really find, I have a hard time with content creation.
Yeah.
Because I have a hard time with stopping the moment, creating something that will be exciting for somebody else, and then making sure it gets posted, right?
Yeah.
Just kind of a weird world.
It has taken a turn, I feel like, recently. I do feel like the video element has made it something very different.
Yeah.
Like I feel like I'm coming back to just like wanting to post photos again, because I'm just like, I don't want to stop my life and just be recording something so I can hopefully get like I don't. Yeah. I'm like not caring about that anymore.
Well, I think the biggest catalyst to that for me is when you watch something happening. Like, let's just say, I mean, a concert is probably the easiest example of it, but anytime something crazy is happening, it never fails that there are at least 4 cameras taking a video of it.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And I stop and I think about like if I was in slow-mo, like I just want to be the person sitting in the back watching it happen.
Yeah.
I don't need, there's 7 other people. Where were we? We were there was some celebrity, right? And of course there's cameras out, and I just sat back and I'm like, someone's got a picture of this celebrity here. So I don't need one.
Yeah.
You know, whatever happened to just being present in the moment.
Yeah.
And that goes back to me feeling this constant need to hustle. It's like whatever happened to just being like, okay, cool. I made it. I have this house. I don't need a bigger house right now. You know, my kid's happy and healthy. I don't need more.
Yeah.
Right now, I don't need more.
Yeah.
But I feel like the constant pressure of Instagram, the constant pressure of, you know, the lifestyle, you feel like you always have to produce
something. Yeah. It's always like what in the back of your mind, like also being the people that we are, like we've been radio hosts. I'm obviously a podcast host. Like you have a lot of things going on in your life. Like you are IT for, you know, Uncommon.
Okay,
it's literally across your chest.
Right?
And you were on like reality. You were on very Cavallari, and it's like there's many lives that's made us or identities that we've like essentially worn that have painted us out to be as if we are influencer / social media people. But it's like, no, that's just like how the world works right now. I'm not trying to be a social media person. I do exist there.
But then you're like, wow, if I put a little bit more effort, I can make so much more money, right? And your mind goes to the entrepreneurial, and you're like, oh, this is how I'm buying into capitalism all over again. But I think about it, and that where it takes me back is culture. And in culture, there are traditions.
Right.
And traditions are sacred because they are passed down to the people that it belongs to. And so I think about everyday life now, and I'm like, what is sacred?
Yeah.
What is something I don't share? You know, other than like going to the bathroom. Like, what is there something in my life?
I've been questioning the same thing.
That is sacred that I can pass down to my little, and it's just something between us that the world doesn't have to be privy to.
I do think a lot of that has to do with like my culture stuff, I will say, because maybe part of it is because it's like it's difficult to portray a lot of it online. One, just because it is, period. It's like weird to show tradition like this on digital form. It's just kind of strange. Yeah. But also it's like, to some of that's just like for me. Yeah. Like a lot of people when they, like I've been told, this is like forever ago, but somebody was like, if you basically want to be respected as an Indigenous woman, like start acting like it, like start acting Indigenous. And I'm like, you have no idea what my practices are, because I don't, like that's a part of me that I don't show a lot, because that's sacred to me. Yeah. And it's like this pressure of like wanting to again, like educate people and show people like we still exist and like blah, blah, blah. But also it's nobody's business either. Right. So the sacred is like hard to just like determine like what.
But here's what I would say back to that person is that if you did act Indigenous, if you did show those things, right, that wouldn't be enough either. No, because you would be doing it wrong, right? Or they did it in a different way in their culture.
Well, they saw somebody else doing it. No, it was like there was this white sex educator telling me this.
Oh, love that.
And yeah, so.
But you know what I mean?
They were like comparing me to another person that was native, but was like a native, like their account was like an educational account. I'm like, I'm not trying to educate people.
But also that's not right. But even that person, I guarantee if you looked at that Indigenous educator profile, if you looked at his or her comments, I'm not sure who it was, but if you looked at those comments, I bet you somebody's like, this isn't right. Right. This isn't how my grandmother did it. This isn't right. So, of course. So then they start breaking it down and it becomes less sacred, because then you start getting this complex of like, oh, well, maybe
I learned it wrong.
Right. Or maybe it was taught wrong. Or maybe and then that's when you go, am I appropriating it? Right. Maybe I shouldn't be doing it at all. Right.
Exactly.
That's where I'm at with life in general. It's like, even in you want to talk about bashing people. I have been very fortunate because I don't post a lot of things about River, but mom shamers are the worst.
I've seen you share about that. I'm like, I can't even imagine.
Yeah, and they just come out of her head, her eyebrows, right? Like I can't imagine if I was like, hey, I'm putting River in this new car seat, and you put them in a car seat wrong, and you have 12,000 people telling you that you're going to kill your kid and that you deserve it if you do, because you didn't put your car seat on right? Wow. So why would I want to share that stuff knowing that, like, first off, I'm a human being, and you put a car seat on 12,000 times. Are you going to do it right every time? No. Yeah. That's what makes you human. Right. Right. Your kid breaks down. Are you going to always go, okay, honey, let's, the gentle parenting method? No. Sometimes you're going to run into the pantry and cry your eyes out. Yeah. Right. That's what makes you human. That's what makes it beautiful. Tradition, what makes it beautiful and sacred is that it was passed down from your family to you. Right? The way that my grandmother makes her gangsum isn't the same that some other family 3,000 miles away in another part of Thailand did. But that's what makes it beautiful and sacred and tradition for me. Yeah. And so even online with my daughter, like I'm teaching her gardening. Am I doing it correctly? No. But watching her in the garden explore, she's picking green tomatoes, who cares? Like those things are what makes the experience so much worthwhile, and it's kind of not worth sharing to everybody. Yeah, because it just sucks my soul.
Right. Well, and mistakes that you potentially make in the garden or whatever, like that's also, she's probably going to learn the most from those things than how you did things right. She's probably going to learn a lot more from the ways that you messed up. You're like, oh, okay, yeah, we don't water this too much, or we use this soil for whatever. It's like she's going to learn a lot from that. Not saying maybe not more, but she's going to learn just as much from your mistakes as she does from the things that you do right. Yeah. And that's like maybe just for her, to know. Like not everyone else needs to see that in between. Although I do think you do a really great job at like showing that you're a human. Yeah. Like not a lot of people do that, It's just a lot of like the glitz and glamour of like, this is what we did today, blah, blah, blah. And it's like so perfect, whatever. And you have those moments, but like, I think you do a really good job of like sharing the real moments in between as well. Yeah. Yeah. And also like calling out the haters.
In Disney. Oh gosh. I'm
You're just like, no,
everyone's I have no like, time. Don't worry about them. They're probably bots. And I'm like, no, sometimes people need to like
be called out.
They just need, I just want you to know that you're not winning.
Right.
You don't get to bully. And it doesn't bother me, but I just want, because if you're doing it to me,
yeah, you're doing it to somebody else.
You're doing it to someone else.
That's
that
how I
may
feel
hurt
too.
them, and I want you to know that this is absolute bullshit, and you can't act like that.
That's how I feel too. It's like anytime somebody's like just comes in and like leaves just the nastiest comment, like I blast them. Like I used to do it more often, but like I just used to put on my story, and I didn't hide who said what.
I'm just thankful some influencers that I know that I absolutely love get it so much worse. There's this one influencer who is body positivity, but they have a Reddit channel on them. I mean, people just write the nastiest things to the point of where she was scared for her life.
Oh,
and
that's
that
awful.
freaks me out.
Yeah.
You know, like when someone gets so involved in hurting and hating you that they start to invade your safety.
Yeah.
All because they're what? Threatened by your happiness. And that's where I'm at. I'm like, you know what?
That's scary. That's when you're like, an
extra 100,000 followers would be nice for like profit, but it's not worth putting my daughter at risk.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Yeah.
I can fight them off, but I can't fight them off for her.
Yeah.
And it's not worth it to me.
Do you feel like your time on Very Cavallari like taught you those lessons?
Oh yeah. I think about Very Cavallari and I have so many regrets. And
Regrets? Okay.
Because I think I was so insecure in those moments about my job, my actual job,
right?
You know, about how I was being portrayed. Like I lost so much weight, not just because I would see myself and be like, I don't like this, you know, and Botox honeys, everybody out there, I love that for you, but I overdid it. Like I was like, I have to do this, and I don't like this, and I don't like this eyebrow, and I got so pinpointed that I was like, what am I doing?
Yeah.
Why and why, right? Like I remember I would get so angry at my ex because when the camera would turn on, he would almost be a different person. But what I didn't realize was so was I. Right?
Yeah.
Because now I look back and I'm like, you don't sound like that. Like,
yeah.
I don't get why. You know, do you really sit like that? Because I would just be like, you know, like the Kardashians.
Put your like jaw out.
Yeah. You would, oh yeah, is that what you were saying? I don't understand. Like I'm like, I don't act like that. You know. But I think it was a good lesson in when the lights turn on, who are you? You know, because everybody wants to say, you know, when nobody's looking, who are you? When no one's looking, I'm in t-shirts and jeans and I'm running in the garden barefoot with my kid.
Yeah.
But when the lights are on, who am I? What face am I showing? And is it something that I'm going to be proud of later? And I think there are a lot of moments in Very Cavallari I wasn't, but I needed it. I needed to be like,
it was
wow,
that mirror.
You need people to love you, Brittainy. God, you need people to love you. And now I'm like, no, I don't need anyone. I need my daughter to love me. I need to be a good mom. I want to be a good partner. I want my dogs to love me. You know, like when I get mad at them, they get sad. I'm like, don't be upset.
Oh,
you fine. You can sit on the couch again.
Of course.
I don't care. This is so morbid, but I used to think about like, if I died, who'd come to my funeral?
I mean, I think we all think
and
about
now
that.
I'm like, I don't want a funeral. I actually just want the people I love to cremate my body and put it over a certain place that I have in my mind where I want to go.
Yeah.
And so I want to be back to the earth.
Yeah.
Because the earth is what brought me here,
Yep.
right? Like I came from the earth, and to earth I go back.
Yep.
I don't need to be loved by like this huge worldly need to be loved by anybody anymore.
Yeah. And that's a big lesson to learn.
Yeah. Took me 10 years.
It does take time.
And honestly, like if someone put lights on me again, I don't know if I would revert back to that person that needs to be loved so well.
Yeah.
Or I've come through it, you know? It's like pressure testing.
It's hard to know. Yeah, it's hard to know until we're given the same like situations. Same way with like family. People are like, you think you're like you've evolved and you've grown, you've awakened. Well, go back home and hang out with your family.
Oh gosh, I can't go for more than 4 days because I know the 5th day is when I break.
Yeah. Yeah. I understand. I'm like, who? And then you're confused because you're like, who am I? I literally just reverted back to like 14-year-old me.
Oh yeah. My aunt and my mom got in a huge fight the last time I was there. And I just remember I was FaceTiming PJ because I wanted him to see River before we went to bed, and you could hear them through the walls.
Oh gosh.
And so I said to him, if you ever wonder where because there's this anger in my family, this aggression that the women have for each other. And so every once in a while I have a good snap moment, you know, and I have to get back into reality, but I really have done woosah as much as I can the rest of my life.
Yeah.
But I literally was like, I just held it ever so slightly to the door. And I was like, if you ever wonder the internal monster that I battle, here it is. And just hearing them like just spew issues with each other, you know, and you don't want to talk about family drama too much, but just watching it, you're like, wow, I was brought up in this fight or flight moment. I was brought up
this
to
makes sense.
Defend myself, deflect against it, fight each other. The other is the enemy. They're always wrong. They can't understand how I feel because they're, you know, living in my victimhood. Like, there's so much there that you come back and you're like, okay, well, that's why I moved 10,000 miles away.
Yeah. So do you have any family that's near?
No.
None?
No.
I will say I'm consistently being refined. I love having my sister around, but she and I probably have some of that, what you were speaking about, your mom and your aunt, like we've had those moments.
Which is nice. My sisters are 7 years apart from me. So I never got those blow up moments with my sister. I was always like big sister to them.
Yeah.
So I never really got because it does let out a lot of good, you kind of need those moments. You do. Sometimes.
We very much like embrace the times that we've had those very explosive like conversations. And we're like, we needed it. Yeah. Like you have to sometimes just plow through, whether it be years of like things that have been going on. But also my sister and I, we're 3.5 years apart, but I will say she thinks we're the same age. I don't. Yeah,
you're like, I know where you are 3 years ago.
I'm very I'm very aware of our age difference. And that's just being older and she's younger. Like that's just how it goes.
It's so funny when I was younger, I used to hate that about people. They'd be like, oh, when you're older. I'm like, I am older. Like, I'm 18, older. I know life. Like I'm good. I have an old soul. Yeah. And then you get to your 30s and you're like, wow, I have absolutely no idea what I was doing. I wish I would have. I was around such great people in my 20s. And I wish I would have just taken a little bit more self out of it and really listened to some of those lessons. I think I would be in a different place, maybe. I don't know. But
you did the best you could at that time.
But just like the absolute invincibility I thought I had in the world.
Yeah.
You know?
Yep. I say that my brain feels the same as it did when I was 27 and a half. Like I've learned lessons, of course, but I will say 27 below, like 27 and a half, I'm like,
I agree.
My wires are the same as they are now, right? I think the same way. Anything underneath that, I'm like, I mean, she was learning. She was like well adjusted. She was wise. Like she was, you know, she knew what she was doing for her age.
She was a pill at 25.
But
a pill.
But like, and we had a lot that we were like going through. Like at 25, I was like going through so many changes. But I will say like 27 and a half, I'm like, that's when I can honestly say I started being the version I am now. And I had different like, I think guess your resources.
Your almost like your core values really come out at that moment.
I agree.
Like, okay. I've developed enough. I would say that there are a lot of things that I came out of right before 30 that I still believe now.
Yep. Yeah. And I think a big part of that is really understanding nuance.
Yeah.
And you're like no longer having to be such a like black and white type person. Again, I think maybe at being an oldest sister, kind of oldest daughter vibe, like a lot of our lives can be, we think things are in black and white. We're like, this is right, this is wrong, this is the best way, this is the wrong way. Like, but then I think at 27 and a half, like I said, it's like things started being like, well, I don't know, man. Like people who really think that are also saying this, which doesn't make sense. And people who think like that, it's like, then you're like, wait a second. Maybe there's something, whether it's in the middle or maybe I can hold two truths at once. Or maybe it's like there's this realization of like looking around at the world around you and you're just like, okay, maybe there's something else.
I think it's a commonality when you start deconstructing just faith in general too, right? Because again, my biggest catalyst was like, why are all these people who say that they're like holier than me? Like what? They're just me. But they're like we both have blood in our veins, like, right? We're not infallible,
right?
And so when you know, for me it was faith, maybe it was for you as well, but in anybody's life there's this one thing where you start to question it, and then you start, and it almost like spreads, and you're like, okay, well, if that can't be right, then what does it look like over here? You know? And so that's the same thing with work. It's like, people are great at their job. There isn't a good or bad. It's just, do I agree with it?
Yeah.
And if I don't agree with it, can I tolerate it?
Yep.
And if I can't tolerate it, then I got to go.
Then it's your responsibility to create your boundary for like where you're going to be, who you're going to be around, what you're going to listen to. It's like, and that's what boundaries are. It's supposed to be about what you do or
Right.
don't do.
And
not
it's just
other
so funny
people.
because we like live in a world where we feel like we have to, there's always a moral authority or an authority figure in each of those places. And you're like, well, not really.
Right.
Because they got there too.
Right.
They had a journey too. They didn't just
Yep.
wake up at a 1-year-old baby and were like, I know all.
Yeah.
Right. They had to get there and learn their way. And so we're doing the same thing. And
Right.
at some point, you know, you have a podcast, you have people who listen to you. That's the same, you know, same as a leader of a church. People are coming to a coming and
You can call me Pastor Lauren.
Pastor Lauren. But I really believe that. I think it's that's what evolving is. It's dissecting things, it's reinventing things, it's putting them back together and see if the pieces fit. And that's everybody's journey can never look the same that way if you do it that way.
Snaps. We love that. Okay, very last question.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're an entrepreneur. You obviously have a lot of things that like up your sleeves. We already talked a lot about the things that like, whether it's the slow life or whether it's the like hustle and should I do this business? It's like, but there's lots of wheels turning up in there. And so I want to just like give you the floor to talk about any things that like is exciting you right now or things that you're working on. Or like what motivates you in this space? Like what projects are currently buzzing through your mind?
So right now I wrote my very first children's book. So I went to school originally for writing. I love writing.
Oh, okay. Cool.
And I think that shows somewhat on some of my, like captions and things like that is I really do feel deeply. And so I like to share that. And because I'm in my next phase, like with momhood, that was the natural next step.
Makes sense. Yeah.
But I really want, what I'm really passionate about right now is togetherness and this relationships that I have with people. So my relationship with my daughter has inspired the writing of the book. My relationship with my grandmother, I really, really, really want to build a cookbook with Thai recipes.
Oh, awesome.
And I think the next natural step after that would be, I don't know. Honestly, I don't know. I'm still in that space of like, where does that work? Is it a podcast? Is it just, you know, is it getting up every day and building a new house? Is it, I don't know what that would be. Yeah.
So, that's really cool. So is that book like, where is it in the process?
I employed the help of my oldest cousin. No, she's in the middle somewhere. She just feels oldest because I connect with her the most.
Yeah.
She's going to be illustrating it.
Oh, how cool.
So my cousin, Brittainy Levy, she's really the sweetest girl ever, but it's funny. I went to her house. They live in Ohio now. And I went to go visit and, she was graduating, high school, getting into college. And I looked around the room and I was like, Marina, I did not know that you were so creative.
Yeah.
You know, because they go to a STEM school. So I sent my mind engineering.
You're brainy.
You're brainy.
Yeah.
But I mean, it uses the same brain.
Right. It's the same brain.
So she was drawing something. And I was like, oh my gosh, you are amazing. I was like, hey, I have this, you know, thing that I wrote for River. I'd love to turn it into a book. Do you think you could illustrate it? And she sent me a few illustrations already that she's like, hey, I'm just, you know, putzing around. I'm like, oh yeah, of course you are. The most beautiful illustrations I've seen.
Oh my gosh,
so I'm
I love
so excited
that.
to have like a family affair together. You know?
Yeah. Oh, that's so cool. Yeah. Well, I'm excited.
And if it does well, then I'll just keep going. But we'll see from there.
Yeah. No. I'm sure it'll be great. I mean, children's books are like, I feel like I'm hearing good things about like that, like writing things and doing things that are within your space, like where your head's at, like what you're consumed with. And it's being a mom right now. And you're like, I read books to my kid. Like this is what
I think too. Like Instagram, you overcomplicate it. You're like, what are people gonna find? I remember wanting to do a podcast like 2 or 3 years ago, and I was like, oh, I really want to do this. And the agency that I work with came back and they're like, yeah, but like, how are you going to how are you going to make other people interested in it? Yeah. And that really hurt me because I was like, I think it'd be interesting, you know? And so the putting on the business brain of something that you're passionate about didn't almost make sense to me because if you love it, I truly believe if you love it and you believe in it, there'll be enough people that
other people will. Yeah.
And of course you have to, if you're attracting the masses, you've got to attract the masses. But I think initially it has to come from the heart. Yeah. So that's where I'm at. Awesome. Anything that comes from the heart.
Amazing. Okay. So we'll all be looking out for the children's book and all the other things that you're like obviously doing. Okay. Well, how can people find you?
Oh, just at my Instagram at Brittainy Taylor. My TikTok is not very good because I have no idea what I'm doing. So just go to Instagram.
Okay. Amazing. And I'll put all the links in the podcast description so they can find it, because you're Brittainy with an I in it.
Brittainy.
Brittainy. That's how I say it when I spell it
That's
out.
how Siri says it. Brittainy, you have arrived.
That's really?
Yeah.
That's funny. Okay, amazing. Well, thank you so much for being on the
Thanks for
podcast
having
today.
me. Thank you for letting me chat.
You're awesome.
Oh, you're awesome.
And thank you.
And I love your plant.
Thank you so much. Yes.
I'm so obsessed with it.
Yes, she is real, by the way, for all of you who see this every week.
You've inspired me. I'm gonna have to keep one alive. I can't. This is my hardship right here.
Yeah, well, I think paying attention to how much water is in it, I'm sure you have it, but like there's like a little stick thing you can see if it's like wet or not in the soil. I think that's how I've kept all my plants alive, is like just seeing if they're needing water or not, because I almost overwatered her, but now I don't. Now it's like every 2 or 3 weeks.
Oh, yeah.
See? Anyway, that's just on that note. But anyway, you guys, thank you so much for listening. We love you as always. And until next time, bye.